Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Spotlight with Sandalina, and I'm your talk show host, Sandalina Sitar. Today's very special guest is Rahul Dhiman, who is a South Asian filmmaker, actor, and production company founder. Rahul is best known for starring in and co-creating Amazon Prime TV's latest Indian American TV series. It's called Upside Brown. Make sure you guys go check it out. We'll link it down in the description. So I met Rahul for the first time in person yesterday at a Brown Girl Mag event. They were showcasing a private screening of the Amazon TV series that they just released called Upside Brown. It was great meeting him in person. And before his trip to New York, we had actually connected virtually through a video call. And we just kind of thought shared and talked about our journeys. And I was really impressed by the work that he had done in the space, as well as his humility when he talked about the creative process and his journey with it all. So where did you grow up?
Grew up in a suburb of Chicago called Buffalo Grove. After growing up in Buffalo Grove, then I shifted to UC Berkeley for college, lived in California for a bit, and then kind of came back to Chicago.
And tell me a little bit more about your family. So you grew up presumably with your parents, maybe some siblings.
So I'm actually an only child.
Oh, okay.
I grew up with one dog who was my brother, that I like to say. A lot of talk about, South Asian parents and things like that. But my parents were very, very, modern and supportive about anything I wanted to do. And so I was very blessed to have been born to them.
Okay, I love that. So I actually was just about to get to that. Tell me a little bit more about their parenting philosophies. It sounds like they were a lot more on the liberal side and the progressive side of things. So tell me what that was like.
100%. Parents' mantra in raising me was very hands-off. And when they'd be applying to colleges, their parents would be, understanding, like telling them like, oh, you got to apply to this college. Have you done this Common App, blah, 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 all these kinds of things. If you ask my parents, they honestly had no idea what even major I was applying to, what colleges I was applying to.
Oh, wow.
And all that stuff. But at the same time, the one thing they always instilled into me was just listening to what you want to do and working hard at it. I think hard work was the one important thing that they instilled in me. I would say they led by example in a way. Okay. And in fact, they almost did the opposite. When I would be it'd be 11:30 p.m., I'd be working on some math homework or something like that.
Yeah.
My dad would come into my room and be like, go to sleep,
Okay, wow.
It was kind of a reverse psychology thing in a way. And
I like that.
I think allowed me to not have the parental pressure in my mind. All the hard work and all the stuff that I wanted to do would come intrinsically on my own. And I felt like that was a very healthy relationship for myself.
Yeah, I really like that you said that because I think a lot of South Asian upbringings can be very prescriptive from a very young age, right? It's almost like with a well-intended dictatorship of sorts, right? It's like, I want my kid to be in this activity. I want them to go to this college. I want them to do this. And it feels like your life is planned for you from the moment that you're born by your parents for a lot of South Asian families. And I had an experience very similar to yours, thankfully, where I feel like my parents also almost did the opposite, where they didn't want to kind of box me into anything too young. So their kind of philosophy was very similar, which was, listen to your inner voice, do what you're meant to. Obviously, like my parents are also religious, like I'm Muslim, so that spiritual upbringing is part of it. But in a way, it's almost good. I think the spirituality element actually alleviates the illusion of control, at least in my household, right? Because my parents are like, we're not God. It's in God's hands, so we just have to leave it to God. So I think that almost led itself to a very similar, healthy dynamic, maybe for a slightly different reason. And I think that ironically, it actually propelled me to want to achieve more in a stereotypical fashion. So I was the one that was hung up on I want to do a career on Wall Street. I want to go to a top school. And my parents were just like, sure. I mean, if you want, And on your parents, so what did they do for a living? What's sort of their story with the American dream?
My dad, when he was in India, he was kind of studying to be pre-med and be a doctor and all that stuff. He moved to this country when he was about 18 years old or so. Okay. So this is right when kind of college was starting. And he moved to Chicago.
Nice.
And when he moved, he found out that the pre-med process takes 9 years or whatever to get your actual degree. And he's like, I'm not doing this. I don't have this kind of time. And when he moved with his whole family. So my grandparents and my uncles and all that stuff. And essentially my grandpa used all his money to get these tickets to come to America. And so what my dad's and his family's life was working at Burger King and then also going to college at UIC, University of Illinois, Chicago is where he went.
Okay.
And then he decided to do electrical engineering because you could get a job after 4 years instead of 9. Yeah. And that was what was appealing to him.
Yeah. Going into debt for med school is not always the most attractive option, especially as an immigrant, but yeah.
And then he ended up, graduating electrical engineering, but then pivoted a little bit, I guess, into nuclear.
Okay.
And since then, he's been in the nuclear engineering business,
Okay.
essentially, changing roles in companies, obviously
Yeah.
here and there, but that has kind of been what he's been doing.
Okay.
And then, my mother was, honestly, I think she's not, I think she is the smartest out of all of us in the household. She was very talented at like writing, computer programming at that time as
Oh,
well, which is like
wow.
earlier at that end. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, when she came, she just kind of started her own Indian clothing business on eBay,
Okay.
and that was her main thing. And she really enjoyed and was able to stay at home while running that business with me and my dog when we
That's
were growing up.
amazing.
So that was pretty awesome. And then at some point she led a more spiritual life, kind of didn't have to work that job as much anymore, and
Okay.
kind of stayed at home and pursued some other things non-professionally.
That's amazing. And I love that your mom was able to balance both, right? Like kind of like having this business on the side, but then also being at home to be a mother and to raise you. And I think that's one thing I talk about on a lot of episodes on this show is just sort of the pressure on women in that generation, but also it's bled into our generation a bit too of trying to balance it all, and you feel like you can't do it all. So I love that
Yeah.
your mom was able to find her balance and pursue the things that made her happy while also being there for you. And then you also mentioned that you're an only child. So what was that sort of dynamic like?
I love being an only child. Honestly, I know there's like some people don't like it, some people do like it, and they
Yeah.
get, I guess, a bad rep to some degree.
Sometimes.
Sometimes there's certain characteristics that are negative associated with them. But I loved it. I mean, for me, I never actually wanted another sibling. I
Wow.
think there's a lot of other only children I've ran into who are like, oh, I wish I had like a sister or like an older brother or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like they have like a certain segment. Like some of them
Yeah.
want a younger sibling or for whatever reasons it is.
Yeah.
For me, I never really even thought of it. I always just wanted a dog, honestly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that was honestly since I was like 2 or 3 years old. Every birthday, I would ask my parents like, "I want a dog. I want a dog. I want a dog."
Wow.
Until on my 7th birthday, it was like, "Okay, you're old enough to kind of take him for a walk and like feed him and
Yeah.
stuff." So that was, I really do view him as my brother. And I don't say it lightly. I do think our relationship was as strong as like anyone's like sibling relationship.
That's really
So I
sweet.
almost don't even consider myself an only child in a weird
Okay.
way. But yeah, I guess worldview wise, yeah, I am obviously an only child. But growing up, I really did like it. I think obviously as a somewhat creative person,
Yeah.
I never got bored. I would always like obviously as an only child, like 20 years ago before social media and all these things, you
Yeah.
have more time and you can definitely get bored.
Yeah.
And I would literally just like jump around in my room and make random stories in my head and pretend that I'm like making something.
Yeah.
And like that's kind of how I like found comfort with myself. It forced me to like love myself and like being in my own company. And I think that actually
Yeah.
served me very well when I got to college and like post college and all that stuff.
A lot of people don't know how to be alone. And I think that New York City is a great place to sort
Yeah.
of see that, right? Where everybody's constantly chasing this, like the cheap thrill of like going from one social interaction to the next. And I'm guilty of it too. When I first moved here, I feel like I would have like 8 to 10 plans in one weekend because I also probably didn't know how to be alone. And I think that learning that from a young age is a really beautiful, powerful tool. Just being able to sit with yourself and live with your own thoughts and be introspective and thoughtful. Would you say that you're more of an introvert or an extrovert?
About 60% introverted, 40% extroverted.
Okay, I'd
I
put
think.
myself at the same, probably. Yeah.
For sure. Depends on the time of the day.
I wanna hear
Daily type
this,
of thing.
yeah.
Like in the morning, I like do not want to talk to anyone. I kind of have a rule where I don't really take meetings until like after 12 p.m. if I
Okay.
can.
Good rule. Defrost a little.
Yeah, I think I also have like a lot of just thoughts running in my head, and I like to like set myself up for the day in that
Yeah.
regard. But yeah, no, once like noon hits, I eat lunch, I get pretty yappy, and I'm like down to like kind of vibe a bit.
I love that.
But that's kind of the split during the day. But even otherwise, like even from like a weekly basis, like yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love to do like cool events on like the weekends here and there.
Okay.
But if I do like 3 to 4 like high octane social events back to back, I kind of need a couple days to just like be at
Yeah.
home and just chill.
Totally.
So
I like that.
yeah.
So going, one last question about your upbringing before we move on. So you grew up in the suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah.
Tell me about what was the demographic like there, and what was also your exposure to wealth growing up, and socioeconomic status? Were you surrounded by very wealthy people?
The suburb I grew up in was, I would say, upper middle class type of neighborhood. Remember my high school. In terms of demographics, I think like Asian demographics would be around 10-20% of the school.
Okay.
So not too low. Like there's definitely like
Yeah.
other Indian people. Like my school was massive. My high school was like 1,000 people per grade, so like 4,000 people.
Oh, wow.
And so there was like, yeah, I mean, like there was definitely like probably like 100 to 200 Indian people, probably like 100 Indian people and all that stuff. So I definitely saw other Indian people, and I was able to make that community over there. So I think I was very blessed in being able to do that.
Yeah.
And I love the high school I went to, honestly. Like I honestly would not really go to another high school. Like it was a public high school, but it was a very good public high
I'm
school.
all for the public school system. I'm a product of it too. I love it. Yeah.
I loved it. And it was just like, you get to meet people from all different backgrounds and stuff like that. So I love Buffalo Grove.
Okay, we have a Buffalo Grove fan here.
Probably the first one, maybe the only one ever. So
I hadn't even heard of it.
I have to represent Buffalo Grove. So
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm happy that I know what it is now. So thank you.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So on a percentage basis, technically a minority, but just by product of scale, you had people, right? You weren't alone.
Yeah.
So I like that. So what was your relationship with your South Asian identity growing up?
I grew up on Bollywood films and like Hindi cinema and a lot of that culture.
Yeah.
I believe I was a very Indian American, if that makes sense. I was very in tune with my culture.
Yeah.
I would say actually the majority of other, South Asian people in my high school in that area were not really, attached to it at all.
Right.
I think that's what made me different than a lot of the other people. None of them would be like, oh, did you see that Shah Rukh Khan movie or whatever? Like, that's just me. I didn't really have anyone to talk about that to besides like my cousins and my family.
Love that.
So that was like, I guess, a little different in terms of some of the other people there. But I definitely, attached more to that identity, I'd say, than other people. And I, even in terms of like all the creative stuff and things I do, I love bringing that part of me into everything. My parents would speak Hindi and English growing up. A lot of other people and friends that I had only be speaking English and would not really know their like native language. So just small things like that, I think, were what set my upbringing a little bit different than the other people in the suburbs of Chicago, at least my friends. But there are definitely a few who shared that with me.
A lot of people, it's very common what you explain, right? It's some of your peers around you wouldn't be as passionate about the culture, which is fine, everyone to their own.
Yeah.
But I think there's something to be said about this trend of sort of dissociating from your heritage and your identity when you're growing up in America as a children of immigrants, because what you don't identify with what you're seeing around you a lot of times or what's in the mainstream media. And I think that's where, media plays a very big role in people's perception of self when it comes to their own association with their culture. And I love that, somebody like you that's making waves in the media to sort of advocate for this community and have representation for this community. You've always loved your culture and always been proud of it and confident in it. So that's good. It checks out.
Did you feel the same thing like in Cupertino?
Oh, good question. Honestly, no. Cupertino was like it was
brown.
pretty South Asian and East Asian, I would say. So I actually think that we were, I don't know what the numbers are, but I think we were the majority.
Like
South and East combined Asian. Majorities. I never felt very shy of my culture. Maybe I think in like preschool, I went to private preschool. So I remember like not being as proud of like, bringing dal chawal to class. I would never, obviously. I'd be like, no. But I was such a kid. I was like 4 or 5. I was very lucky in that regard. But yeah.
I'm not gonna hot take. I actually enjoyed being like minority in a way.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me more about that.
If it's like not like an underdog type of thing. But
okay. I was just gonna say, are we going there? We can go there.
I actually do love underdog stories and movies as a movie buff, but it's like I almost felt like I had like a superpower in a way that other people didn't have.
Okay.
Almost, it's like I had this different perspective of what life is and like a more expanded worldview or a different side of me that other people almost didn't have. And I think that's also what led me towards like associating with it more. Yeah. Because I felt like the more I dip into it, the more like unique I can be as a person than just like somebody else.
Maybe I can relate to some extent. I'm Pakistani.
Yeah.
And Cupertino is like predominantly, the South Asians within that are like predominantly Indian.
Yeah.
So I always felt like I had a cool little like Pakistani flair. I was like, like I'm Pakistani. But yeah, being sort of having your own sort of niche and not being, like everyone around you, there can be a lot of benefits to that. So that's a cool hot take. I'll take it. Tell me a little bit more about your dreams as a kid and how that sort of translated to your academic journey.
My dreams as a kid started very early, but I realized them very late in life. Growing up, I would take 40-minute showers, like no argument, no one can stop me. What was actually going on in my head was just random stories were playing in my head. And sometimes if I watched a movie last night and there's like a song in there, I would imagine like a different version of a song with like me dancing in it or like somebody else. It could be somebody else dancing in it or like some argument from a TV show I saw, and if it was like replayed in a different way, all these random things just like going naturally in my head. It's
Since
not
you
like
were a kid.
yeah.
Like how old would you say when this started?
Probably like 7, 8, 9
Wow.
type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think before then it was just kind of whatever.
Yeah.
I don't remember what my mornings were like, but yeah, I think, yeah, definitely like around 7 or 8 is kind of when it started. And I just thought that was normal. And then once the shower ended, the dreams, you could say, ended.
Yeah,
in a way.
Back to reality.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're immersing yourself into this like alternate reality in the shower,
Yeah.
which is 40-minute showers. Okay, that makes sense. And then you have to come back to reality and.
Yeah, exactly. And then like for me, obviously those years would be school, right? And so I was, ever since I was 7 all the way to the end of high school, it was kind of just doing that whole thing, like have like a nice shower in the morning and then enjoy that and take my dog for a walk, and then life starts. Essentially. And so I was always pretty good at math, science as the years went on.
Yeah.
And so all the signs indicated that, I'll probably do like engineering or some math related type of thing as a major. I always thought very practically in terms of like what I should become professionally. But there was always a deep part of me that wanted to do something I was passionate about. And I think this existential crisis I had like in high school and college was that I'm like decent at math and all these other things, but I didn't dream about it. And especially as like a, cinema buff, when you watch a lot of movies get you inspired. You hear stories about people overcoming crazy things and like, changing the world. And I wanted my life to be like that.
Yeah.
What I was studying and what I was doing during my actual day life didn't feel like I was doing that. And so I almost felt like all my efforts were almost being wasted, as if like, what is the point if I don't care about this? Listening more to my intuitions of like, what do you want to do? In the back of my head in those showers that I would take every morning, it was obviously movies were playing in my head. So that's like a sign that that there's something deeply intrinsic in me to tell these stories.
Yeah.
And so I did have a moment at some point where I kind of figured that out a little bit. And I was like, oh, maybe I want to be an actor or something. Because I did take an acting class in high school to get the kind of gen ed like a requirement to apply to the California schools, University of California system, like the arts type of.
So in Illinois, you were prepping for the California. Is it that big of a deal?
Well, no. So it was like senior year.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I want to apply to like UC Berkeley and like UCLA and all that stuff.
Oh, wow.
And I was kind of looking at the requirements.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you need to take like a fine arts class. You need like 1 credit or
So interesting.
4 credits or something like
yeah.
that. And I was like, I have not taken a single whatever.
Yeah.
I was disgusting at music and art, like drawing and everything. And so like I was like, all right, I need to do something. And the acting class was open, and I think the subconscious in me, I was like, this would be relatively the best one to take.
Yeah.
Fun class to take with friends, and we all kind of goof around and all that stuff. But I was actually low-key taking it seriously. I was like actually like memorizing my lines like in between classes.
You're probably like embarrassing. Don't want to tell your friends.
Yeah.
You're like, I actually take this seriously.
No, because like all my friends are going in, they didn't know their lines. Like, line, oh yes, I am. How are you? It's like really like shitty acting. And I was like in the back, like, oh, I'm about to pop off. I better see this coming.
Like I stayed up all night for this.
And then I do my final presentation, like a monologue, and they're just like, what? This guy went crazy. And so I was like, but.
That's so funny.
And then the feeling I got after that performance was like something I hadn't felt in a long time, like ever almost. I think. And then that's when it like a little bit in me started to churn. I think in high school, and I think it was planted in the back of my head. So that's why in college, when like COVID happened, I was like kind of back home for a summer break or something like that.
Okay.
I was like, oh, maybe I should try acting, and so I ended up reconnecting with my friend Yash, who actually co-created Upside Brown with.
Nice.
He's been wanting to be a director since he was like 12 years old. So he's gotten to figure it out way before me.
Yeah.
And he was doing like a little short film or something. And he was looking for South Asian actor. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Why not?
Yeah.
So I did that. I really enjoyed it. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should get an agency or something. I found a very new agency in Chicago.
Okay.
And I auditioned for them. They were kind of taking everyone because they were really new. So I got in.
Nice.
So that was really cool. I started going on sets more. And then I started listening a little bit more to the dreams I was having in the shower, and I had like 3 or 4 stories in my head. And so I had this one story that I could like verbalize. I've never written a screenplay before. Okay. But I was like, I had this story, and my friend Yash is a very good writer and director. And so I was like, Yash, I have a story. I want to act in it. I'm going to tell you the story. If you can write the screenplay and direct it, that would be very epic. Yeah. And so that's what I did. I kind of told him the story. He wrote it, directed it. I acted in it. It was a fun time. Definitely a learning experience. It was during COVID, so it was literally just like the only actors were like me, his brother, and like his parents. It was like a very like small type of set. Acting to writing, then from writing to directing, trying that, and then now like even producing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I kept working my way slowly more back and figuring out that like these dreams I had in my head is just like I love the process of turning this into reality.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of it was a multi-year process to honestly get to that. It wasn't like a overnight thing.
So you were talking about how this all happened while you were in college. So tell me a little bit more about your college experience.
For college, I went to UC Berkeley. Go Bears.
Yeah, go Bears.
So,
Woo. What graduating class?
2021.
Okay, so you're right before me.
Yes.
And what did you study?
I studied chemical engineering.
Okay, nice.
And so the reason I decided to do chemical engineering, which is very different than filmmaking, is that I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I was good at math and science in school, and those are like my best subjects. And I was like, I'd say I'm pretty analytically minded.
Sure.
And so also my dad was an engineer. So I was like, oh, this kind of makes sense. I also was very passionate about like climate change and clean energy and all that stuff.
Went to the right school for it.
Yeah, 100%. No, Berkeley has a great program for chemie and also like just, climate tech and clean energy and all that stuff. And so that's what I applied for everywhere, essentially. And that it was honestly a process of elimination in a way, because I was like, okay, engineering, I kind of care about this social cause, and like chemie is one of the ones that can kind of get me there. And so I interned at a couple battery startups, essentially in the Bay. I also did research at like the National Lab at Berkeley.
Oh, wow.
And I hated it, to be honest. Like, I did not enjoy being in the lab like whatsoever.
Well, at least you figured it out, right?
Yeah. But then I kind of had like, I guess you could say quarter life crisis. Hopefully I lived that long for it to be a quarter life crisis. So it was like,
I think I'm at mine right now.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. I really do like care about like the causes, but it's just like I hate being in the lab. Like I don't know what this is. And so then I was like, okay, maybe I just don't like engineering, which is fair. And I was like, oh, maybe I can do some more businessy related stuff. Maybe I'm more a business person and all that. And so then I started.
Could have hopped over to Haas and said hello.
I was very I contemplated. I was like honestly 2 minutes away from changing my major.
Okay.
It was really close.
Haas is the school of business, by the way, at Berkeley. That was what that joke was. Anyways, yeah.
I ended up doing a concentration in business.
Okay.
So I got a little bit of that, but I did almost fully change my my degree, not to Haas, but to like IEOR, which is like Industrial Engineering Operations.
Okay.
Which is like kind of closer.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But I realized I would have to do an extra like semester or two.
No, yeah. I mean, sometimes it's just not worth
like,
it.
I was like, nah, it's not happening. So I was just like, I'm gonna suck it up. I made a mistake. It's fine.
Okay, it's okay.
And
We'll
so
learn.
then I tried to do more business stuff, and so then I ended up interning at Tesla at their like supply chain team for batteries.
What kind of intern were you?
Yeah, I was a global supply management intern.
Okay.
At Tesla.
Okay.
And
nice. Did you ever see Elon?
I was so close.
Okay.
But when
I always like to ask people.
when I was interning there, it was the COVID year. It was like I started February 2020, kind of remote. Most of my internship, but I think I would have saw him otherwise. He approved a PO that I made though.
Oh, okay, look at you with the purchase order.
Yeah,
exactly. There
yeah.
we go.
Yeah, so but that was the closest I've gotten to him, I guess. And this was like around the time when I was starting to do acting, and so I was like, oh, whatever, I'll just keep doing acting and figure it out.
Yeah,
and that was my plan. And then when COVID really hit, that's when I really had a lot of time to just sit and think and figure out what I really want to do, and that's when these like writing, directing, producing aspirations came, and then since then it's kind of taken off.
Follow the mold, like a lot of brown kids, right? Which is not. It's actually a great thing, if you can set your mind to something and do it, even if you're not intrinsically drawn towards it. That's a skill in itself. So you did that. You saw it all the way through, and then you completely 180'd. So what was that like? Were there any fears at the time? Were anxieties and what are people gonna say? Like what was going through your mind?
Very, very planned out.
Yeah.
In a way, I was like, I want to be, making a certain amount of money and have free time to explore these things, because there's a lot of things in life where it's like you try it out and then maybe it's actually not what you want to do.
Yeah.
It's like you try it and then once it starts being your career, that passion might go away. And I've seen that happen a lot. And I think I didn't want that situation to happen where I like leave all this, go all into that and realize that's not necessarily what it is.
Yeah.
I was very much of the mindset that like, there's 24 hours in a day. If you really allocate all your time to doing both of these things, you'll figure out like if you really do love that.
Yeah.
And if you do, then you can make the jump and you'll know when to make the jump.
Yeah.
And from a practical standpoint, I think that's like the best way to pursue a creative career, in my opinion. I think it's like, if you're not sure exactly what you want to do, it's like, if you have your 9 to 5 or whatever you have, like you have your 5 to 9 and the weekends to work at it. And if you that's, I think, the sacrifice you have to make to try that out.
Yeah.
But I do think it's the more sustainable option as well.
Yeah.
And that was kind of how I went about it to mitigate risk a little bit.
Yeah.
You know,
Mitigate risk. I love that. Very analytical in your thinking too. I like, yeah.
But, in doing that, the social part of, what people will say, it actually drove me in a way. It's like, I actually didn't care what people think, but it was like I don't know if it's unhealthy or whatever, but I had this thing where I wanted people to like talk bad about me in like family get-togethers. Saying
I've never heard this before. I'll be honest with you. But
okay,
keep
so
going.
This is not healthy, I guess.
But I know, I'm interested. Keep going.
It would be like. Okay.
I know. I was just so flabbergasted. No, keep. That's great.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So yeah, I'd always have this like little devil on my shoulder where it's like I'd want to hear people being like, oh, Rahul was studying chemical engineering at UC Berkeley and now he wants to be an actor like Shah Rukh Khan or whatever. You know what I mean? And he's throwing everything away. Like I kind of wanted to hear that.
Yeah.
Because it would drive me to prove them wrong in a way. Like I said, don't know if that's healthy, but that was kind of, I would say, what I wanted to kind of feel and be like, no, I can do this. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. And I think it's because I didn't have that growing up. And that's very healthy. I was like, my parents are very supportive and they've always wanted me to do something cool. And my parents love films, especially my dad. Like he's always been like, do something cool with your life and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know what it was until like recently. And so I never had this thing saying you can't do this. And
you never had like a rebellious phase, right? Because your parents were so progressive. Exactly. So this is your rebellion.
Yeah. And it's this thing, like people want what they don't have in a way. I think there is an aspect of that where, people tell you you can't do something or you can't like have that, then you're going to want it more. Yeah. I never had that. And so I kind of wanted a little bit more of that to feel it. Okay. So I was looking for a fight in a way.
It's a refreshing sort of take on the whole auntie gossip culture, because I think a lot of times it's something that like weighs people down, understandably so. It's a very like human, normal response. Yeah. But it's cool to hear kind of like a positive take on it and be like, well, actually, you know what? That's kind of what's gonna fuel my fire. So bring it on.
Yeah.
Nice, very nice. And I think that's gonna be a very good transition to the hot seat segment.
Okay.
So before we move on and talk about your accomplishments in the present and everything that you've achieved, I want to do a quick rapid fire session. I'm just going to ask you a few questions and you just answer very quickly within a couple seconds, the first thing that comes to mind. In Chicago currently, what's your favorite part about living there?
Architecture of Chicago and just the prettiness. Like every day you look out the window and it's just like beautiful.
What are some of your favorite spots in Chicago?
Sierra. Also underrated is this very small like grocery store called Carniceria Maribel. Okay. And it's like a grocery store, but they have really crazy tacos.
Ooh. So, yeah. Do you know what that translates to?
Yeah, Carniceria is like a meat store. Okay. And Maribel is just the name, I think. So it's like Maribel's meat grocery store.
I like that. Yeah. Inspirations in the media.
Shah Rukh Khan and Derrick Rose.
SRK. That's a good one. That's a classic. That's a good one. Classic, who are some of your mentors in this space?
Abhi Varghese. Okay. As his mentor. He's like a South Asian filmmaker. Yash Hatkar is my best friend in this space. He's the one I created Upside Brown with. And he's the one who actually got me to find my dream of being a filmmaker.
Dream project.
Dream project is a feature film with Shah Rukh Khan acting in it.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah. Okay, cool. Pinch me moment where you just couldn't believe you were where you were.
Same thing. Pinch me moment was when we got Upside Brown accepted to a streaming platform, I would say.
Okay, got that green light.
Yeah.
I love that. Biggest obstacles as a South Asian navigating entertainment?
I'd say the lack of seeing other successes in that space and like having a blueprint that one can follow.
Yeah. I totally get that. And it's something that, in a way, it's inspiring because it's very clear that there's a white space to be filled.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, it is a bit discouraging, right? Because you're like, well, there aren't that many people that look like me that do this. So like, am I wasting my time? And but I love that you're pursuing it because I think more people like us need to see people like us on the screens one day. So that's huge. Best piece of advice you've ever received in the space?
Yeah, entertainment is a game of attrition. It's not a sprint. It's more of a marathon. I think a lot of people go into filmmaking or whatever it is thinking I got to make it by 30 and I'm just going to go all in for 5 years.
Yeah.
But if you really look at it, it's the people who stick with it for 20, 30 years and don't drop out that make it out on top.
Yeah. That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, it's something I think about a lot is for in the podcast space, especially with talk shows and stuff and this sort of interview format, long form, a lot of people don't see $1 revenue until years
Yeah.
go by, right? So it's interesting. You really just have to keep at it. Biggest BTS fail. That smile. I feel like something horrible happened.
So there's this one scene in Upside Brown
Okay.
where my character's name is Vijay.
Okay.
He goes by VJ,
Okay.
and he's not very liked by the other actress's friends.
Okay.
Essentially, he's not very popular in that friend group, and so there's a plan going on where Shweta is going to do a fake slap to VJ,
Oh,
essentially, and
you're
so
about to get slapped on TV.
yeah, and
Okay.
this is scripted actually.
Yeah.
That the other character, the actress who plays it is Haritha, and her character's name is Simran. She doesn't like me, so she is going to show Shweta how to do a fake slap. And so she, in the script, she actually slaps me. But one would think, you can have like some sound design on the side showing the slap and all those kinds of things. And it's all my fault because I told her, slap me as hard as you can, I'll be fine.
So the slap is real?
The slap is real. I don't know if you've seen it in the trailer. Check out the trailer for Upside Brown. You will see the slap and the sound. That's real sound, real slap, bada boom. And then
no sound effect is crazy.
no. And then what happened was Yash was behind the camera at that moment because I was obviously acting, and he's like, another take. And I'm like, no, we're not doing another take. Like,
that's crazy.
Yeah. So it was honestly fun. I'd say it was a fail, but
okay.
fail
Did
on
you ever
my
get
face.
slapped as a kid growing up?
Yeah. It was
Okay,
good for
so
me.
it just took you back
Yeah.
to the good old
Yeah,
days.
the good old days.
Guilty pleasure. Sorry. Oh man. Guilty pleasure.
Oh, that's a good word. I have very weird habits, but they're not guilty pleasures.
Okay.
Like I can clap with one hand.
Okay.
That's
Wait,
weird.
what?
Yeah.
Can you show me?
Yeah. So that's just good. You have the mic. It's like,
That is really
Yeah.
interesting.
yeah. Thank you.
You're like, that's your talent. I love that. Favorite South Asian dish?
Oh, very, very stereotypical, but it is chicken makhani,
Oh.
butter chicken. Very
yeah.
stereotypical, but it is the facts. It's fire.
Okay, so my
But-
one thing I will say about butter chicken,
Yeah.
is I just feel like chicken tikka masala is so much better. But
Spicier. Yeah,
yeah,
it
do you-
depends. I think the chicken makhani has to have spice in it for me. Otherwise,
But isn't it just
I actually don't really
know the difference?
Yeah, like if it's spicy, then I'm down.
Any daily mantras?
Just here for a limited amount of time. So as long as like no one's dying or anything, like it can't be that bad. So if
Yeah.
anything bad happens at work, it's like, it doesn't matter. Whatever.
Yeah.
We'll move on. That's kind of my
I
thing.
like
And
that.
I think it allows me to be emotionally detached from like bad things that happen.
I
But at the
agree.
same time, even good things, like it doesn't like get me too high on like amazing things that happen. It's like, you know what, it's fine, it's cool. I'm glad
Yeah.
it happened, but life moves on.
Well, what a great way to conclude our hot seat segment. Do you want to tell the audience really quickly exactly what Upside Brown is? And feel free to break the fourth wall.
Yeah, 100%. So, Upside Brown is an Indian American TV show, a mockumentary satire that highlights the Indian American experience. And the story is about two different families, both Indian American, but one is, pretty modern, and the other one is a bit more conservative. And the concept is that for some reason that you'll find out if you watch the show, they're both housed under the same roof for temporary period of time. And Upside Brown, the goal of it is to, in a satirical, comedic manner, touch upon the nuances in South Asian culture as conflicts arise between these two different worldviews of the family. Upside Brown was created by myself and Yash Hadkar. He is my co-creator and partner in everything that we've done. And we were literally just sitting on a call during COVID, and we're like, we want to make something sick. Like,
Yeah.
what do we want to do? And we were just brainstorming ideas. And one day, Yash's family friend kind of said, oh, what if you guys made like an Indian American sitcom or something like that, or even an Indian sitcom or whatever like that. And he shared that idea with me, and it kind of perplexed both of us because we're like, there's not
It doesn't
really one.
exist.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
why? That's crazy. It's like, it feels like it should. Like there are obviously, Indian shows, and there's other, like in India and all that stuff. But if you really think about, Indian American shows, yeah, there's Never Have I Ever.
Yeah.
But the way, and I think, that's a great step for our community and stuff. But, Yash and our upbringing was very different than what was portrayed in that show. And we're like, it would be really cool to show our take on what the Indian American experience is.
Yeah.
And our experience growing up, Yash and mine, was that we spoke Hindi and English growing up. And it's
Yeah.
like, but it was a mix in very different nuances. Like if we were talking with our cousins, we only talk English. If I'm talking to my grandparents, I only speak Hindi.
Yeah.
But if it's with my parents, it's like, kind of like a 70% English, like 30% Hindi type of vibe. And I think I think a lot of people relate with that.
Yeah.
At least those ratios in a way. And I think that was one very key aspect we wanted to touch on, because even if the story is the same, I think having that nuance in there makes it feel more real and relatable. The other thing was, touching upon things that are said behind closed doors in, South Asian households. I think a lot of times, people present themselves in public and as perfect and all these kinds of things, as if we don't have these same problems and issues that other communities do. Yeah. But really, we do. It's the same, like, we're people, everyone is people. And that's also why we wanted to create Upside Brown in a mockumentary satire style, kind of like The Office, where you get to, break the fourth wall. You get to have like essentially the behind the scenes of what is running behind a household. That coupled with like these two different worldviews of families in the same house allows us to touch upon topics, like race, gender, and all these kinds of things, specifically in the, South Asian American experience, where I feel like other styles of filming would not allow you to do that. Okay. And that was our goal. It's like, if we can just bring these concepts and bring these conversations as questions or like topics to the community, then we would have been successful.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that you're talking about touching on the conversation that happens behind closed doors, because I find that this is something that, as somebody that's gone to many davets, which is just like, get-togethers and dinners with people in your community and such, I find a lot of it to just feel very performative, right? It's a lot of people putting on a show. Oh, my daughter, my son, and there's something to be said about just like those naked truths, right? Just understanding what really happens behind closed doors. I mean, I think a lot of people, I'm interested to watch and find out what sort of themes you do touch upon. But I think there are a lot of experiences that make people feel very isolated, right? And I think maybe just seeing on TV somebody that looks like you, that's also going through the same thing behind the closed doors on the set that they're going through behind the closed doors in real life, right? Yeah. That's powerful. And I think it starts dialogues about, some of these dynamics that take place on a day-to-day basis. And I just love that you were able to bring that to life, because I agree. I think Never Have I Ever is great, by the way. And I think that they take a huge step for all of us. 100%. But ultimately there's more to be done, right? Yeah. There are different flavors of sort of South Asian family dynamics, right? I felt in Never Have I Ever, it was something that was a bit more Americanized, which made sense, because this is like kind of the first big step for a brown TV show in America. So they kind of have to walk that line.
Yeah, you do have to walk the line and be like, attractive to a wider audience and get the name out there. And I think that's huge. And I think that it'll do a better job of doing that than, other like, Upside Brown and all that stuff.
I think there's a huge space for what you are creating. And I think there's a huge audience. It's just about getting it in front of them. But I do see that, there's a need for that sense of authenticity, honesty, and relatability through the screen. So yeah, I love that you're doing that. And did you take any, you don't have to say who, but were there any, characters that were written that were inspired by people, in real life? Or you talk about these kind of polarized family dynamics, like any people that come to mind that you're like, oh, this was maybe subconsciously or consciously based on this experience or this person?
Oh, honestly, I think 80% of the show was taken from real life. Yeah.
And so I want to understand a little bit more about the format of the show. So how many episodes is it so far?
First season that we released is 9 episodes. Okay. And about each episode is about 35 minutes plus or minus 10 minutes. In creating this, in 2020 was when we got the idea. Yeah. During that COVID time. And we had very limited resources, and you couldn't really even leave the house or anything. Sure. So we made a very, very, very bootstrap pilot version that we released on YouTube, like super low budget, just to get the concept out there. Yeah. And, we used that to try to get the concept out there and raise some funds to create the whole season. Yeah. And that was our goal. Everyone was telling us we couldn't do it, which, going back to like my previous thing, was exactly what I've been waiting for my whole life, for people to say like, you can't do something. Yeah. And that's when we knew that we had to do this, because no one else is doing it. Yeah. And so if you do something else no one else is doing, then you're probably doing something right to some degree. I like that. And there's a reason it's hard, I think. And so that's why we wanted to set out to do it.
So tell me a little bit more about the process behind it. So it's a 9-episode show, around 300 minutes from start to finish. Like, how many days were you on set? How many days spent, or years even, in ideation? And how did, getting the finances together, how long did that take? So walk me through the roadmap.
The roadmap was created by reverse engineering what we needed.
Okay.
We knew from scripting it out that we have 9 episodes. And you're like, this is the story. The story has to be told in 9 episodes, and we locked that script.
And how long did that script take?
For sure, yeah.
Make?
The scripting process took about 4 months.
Okay.
And before that, we made a very bootstrap version of the pilot to raise
Right.
some funds. Once that was completed, which took about 2 to 3 months, not very long, very quick process.
Yeah.
That's when we initiated the scripting process.
Okay.
And from then on, that took about 4.5 months.
Okay.
This was while I was in college.
Okay.
We would be writing this my last semester.
Nice.
And while that was happening, we were doing an Indiegogo campaign to raise some money.
Right.
And we raised a little bit of money. And I'm very happy to go very in depth of actually what the numbers were, because I think it's important for independent filmmakers to understand what can be done for what amount.
Yeah. That'd be great.
We ended up raising about 15K or so.
Okay.
And that was not nearly as much as we needed for the whole show.
Right.
But we weren't even aiming to fundraise for the whole show, because we
Okay.
wanted to reach like a small amount. And our goal, what Yash and I did, was self-fund the rest of it.
Okay.
We were very, very bullish on the idea, and we had a budget about 80K with post-production to get this done.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
At most.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the most we'd want to do, essentially. So
For a 9-episode show, that's actually a pretty tight budget.
very tight, because typical episodes, I've been on sets for like bigger shows and stuff. Like each episode can be $1 million.
Yeah, totally. I totally see that. Yeah.
Which is why we say that we made the show with 1% of the budget of
Yeah.
a TV show. If you round up to 100,000 with marketing and some other struggles that we went through,
Yeah.
it kind of got up to there.
Yeah.
$100,000 for 9 episodes for a full season, as opposed to maybe a $10 million type of show.
Yeah.
It's about 1%. There are shows you can do for less, obviously,
Sure.
but it's in that ballpark range.
Yeah.
And that's what we knew we were working with. So we had to reverse engineer from that budget we had.
Okay.
And Yash and I had not gone to film school. Our mindset in doing this was, instead of paying money to go to film school,
Yeah.
let's make a project and learn a lot of being in person.
Yeah.
Because I honestly I'm not a crazy fan of like the concept of film school for myself. I think
Sure.
I'm very much a learner by doing.
Yeah.
Whether it was engineering, whether it was anything else, I learned by being in the field or doing what I had to do.
Yeah.
And so I really felt that like filmmaking is a really quickly changing landscape. From all the advice I got, it's like you're gonna learn more by being on set than like a couple years of being in film school.
I believe it.
And I think what you learn in film school, or what you gain in film school, is like connections and other really talented people, which I think that's true.
And I think maybe a lens through which to view the artistic talent too, like
Yes.
maybe more of a framework instead of, which is good and pros and cons, but yeah.
100%. Yeah. You learn the rules and you can break them.
Yes.
But I also believe that nowadays that you can learn all this stuff online as
Totally.
well. And so that's kind of my process. Me and Yash have always been very, what is the problem and what is the direct solution?
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, we have like, with just production, we have about $50,000 to do production. So
Yeah.
we can keep some money for like music and sound design and
Sure.
coloring and all that stuff for post-production. And we're like, okay. So we talked to our DP, our cinematographer.
Okay.
His name is Kane, and he helped us crazy throughout the whole process because we were just rookies.
Yeah.
And we're like, this is our budget. How many days can we shoot for? And the number was 17 days. It ended up being.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like with the
That's
number
only
of
like
actors. Yeah.
2 days per episode, less than.
Yes.
So things can't go wrong.
Yes, they can't go wrong. If you think about it, 17 days, when I say that to people casually, like, oh yeah, that must have been a really fun, like, long time.
No,
hanging with
that's
people."
stressful. That's
Yeah.
what's crazy.
It's crazy. And we're like, okay, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
That's all we can do.
Yeah.
So we're like, all right, let's find a way to make this happen.
Yeah.
And so then we had to reverse engineer a way to create the show in 17 days. And so we're like, okay. Luckily, when we were making the script, we engineered it in a way where it would be low cost. Two things. One, the mockumentary satire style. We could have 2 cameras, 2-camera set, while not having to like use a tripod and have like crazy lighting, because we can use zooms and all these things to get multiple angles within one take.
Oh,
or
nice.
a few different
Nice.
takes.
Yeah.
And you don't have to flip the cameras to get the other actor's take. So we could save time in doing that. And also in the mockumentary filming style, the audience allows you to have a little bit more rugged looks
Sure.
and moving around. So it's actually accepted
Okay.
just by the audience.
Yeah.
The other thing is 90% of the 90% of the show takes place in the same house. So you're not changing
Oh,
locations
that's actually
whatsoever.
very helpful.
Mhm.
That's very helpful.
That
Yeah.
was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And it was a really fun time because we ended up having the crew and cast sleep over on set
Yeah.
at the place and
Where'd
then
you
wake
guys
up.
film?
We filmed in Elgin, Illinois, which is a suburb.
Okay. Was it like
We ended up-
somebody's house you knew? Or?
Yeah, we ended up doing like a renting, like a random, like a kind of Airbnb type of vibe.
Oh, so you? Oh, wow. That must have added up cost.
Oh yeah, it was a good amount of cost.
Yeah.
I mean, it was about $8,000 to rent the Airbnb for a month or
Okay.
so.
Oh, okay. That's actually
Wasn't yeah
less than I was thinking.
yeah they kind of gave us a deal and all that.
Yeah.
So it was kind of nice.
Yeah.
And so that was the process for which we got the housing.
Yeah.
And that was our process of like scoping, like, okay, we have 17 days with this much money. And now we're like, okay, we have the script done. Now we need to optimize all our time.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you go to film school and you know anything about film, you'd probably be making a shot list and a shooting schedule and all these call sheets.
Yeah.
We didn't know what that meant. And so what we did is we had this disgusting Excel sheet where we just broke every scene down into language that only Yash and I knew. So, for example, it would be Vijay Shweta kitchen.
Yeah.
No one else knows what that means, but I
Yeah.
know it's like, you know, episode 2, 12 minutes in or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right. And he knows that, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And we broke each scene into like a block, and we color coded it by the location in the house that it is.
Oh my gosh.
And so we're like, okay, these are all, and the actors that are there.
Yeah.
We also had to play with actors availability and all that. So
Sure.
it was like a crazy operations kind
Yeah.
of thing. And we're like, all right, we need to do all the scenes in the same location back to back to back to back so we can not have as many lighting changes and location changes
Right.
within the house. So we spent a few days crafting that schedule, while also then we were simultaneously casting, because we had like about we have 6 main characters and we have like another like 8 or 9 like side characters.
Okay.
So we would do auditions online, virtual Zoom simultaneously while like making this arbitrary kind of shooting schedule.
Right.
Had our cast locked in after a couple months, and then it was time to start rehearsals. So we would do Zoom rehearsals, and I give all the credit for this to Yash. He was great at working with a lot of these actors. A lot of these actors were first-time actors, given the budget we were working with. We paid them all, but like we were not able to afford obviously like huge actors or anything like that.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
all independent, like not like starting out actors.
Yeah.
And we also did want to give them the opportunity, but we did a lot of rehearsals. Our actors were great and like always very diligent.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of the process a few months into the show,
Okay.
before the show started. And then, you know, before we knew it, it was time to actually shoot the thing. We had our crew set, which Kane really helped us get the right people for that budget.
Okay.
And our crew size was about 6-7 people,
Okay.
main people. You know, a few people on camera. It was a multi-camera shoot, some audio,
Yeah.
lighting, just the basics. And yeah, we started shooting in the Airbnb in end of October of that year.
What year is this?
This was 2021,
Okay.
so a while ago. End of October is when we filmed it, over the course of a month, but 17 days.
Okay.
And what's really funny is we went through day 1, and we got through half of our schedule on day 1 by the end of it.
Yeah.
And so Yash and I were like, we're screwed. Everything is done. Like,
Yeah.
GG. Like it's
Yeah.
it's over kind of thing. But what we did was literally that night, and this was every night after shooting, we would have like a 10 to 12 hour shoot day, say like 10 a.m. to midnight or something.
Yeah.
From midnight to like 2 or 3 a.m., we would have to schedule the next day. And after this first day, we were like, at this rate, we won't be able to shoot the whole
Right.
thing.
It's just yeah.
So we went through the whole story and we're like, all right, what scenes can we cut and have the story still work? And then we made
Wow.
a separate section of like, all right, these are the cannibal scenes that we can get rid of, and the story still makes sense from
Yeah.
episodes 1 through 9. And we put that in a separate section and move them towards the end of the schedule.
Yeah.
And then we had like a very big motivational like chat with our crew
Yeah.
one day, and we're like, you know,
Pep talk.
yeah, pretty much. And it's like the shots were coming out very beautiful
Yeah.
on the first day, but the lighting setups were taking a little bit too much time.
Yeah.
And we were like, you know, it's great and it looks really awesome, but if we keep at this rate, we're gonna have 5.5 episodes done, but not even, because we're shooting out of order. We'll shoot a scene.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
We'll
yeah,
shoot a scene from episode 1, then we'll
Yeah.
shoot a scene from episode 5
Okay.
because they're both in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Then we'll shoot another scene from like episode 6.
Yeah.
And so if we keep this rate up, we're gonna have like a half finished season, but also like no finished episodes,
Yeah.
and it'll be like a waste.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
totally.
we figured out that a way to do lighting setups quicker, although it made it a little less nice in terms of like what the crispness and like saturation would be.
Yeah.
But that was like one thing you sometimes have to figure out what you sacrifice on when you're working at like a 1% of the budget that anyone else is.
Completion is better than perfectionism.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that was this decision we had to make. And then from that day on, we were just kind of rolling. And I honestly, me and Yash, to this day, we still don't know how we did it,
But you
because
did it.
we averaged about 3 hours of sleep for a month, that whole month.
That's
Besides
insane.
breaks. It was,
So that's
and I've never done that
insane.
before, because I'm very particular about my sleep.
Yeah.
Like I sleep very well. I always sleep like
You're
8
sleeping
hours.
in your morning showers.
Yes, those are like, though I'm like kind of useless without those.
Yeah.
Because I also don't do coffee or drink coffee or
I don't
anything.
drink coffee either.
Yeah, let's go.
Oh, nice.
That's what I'm
Okay,
about.
cool.
Yeah, welcome to the gang. But that's like
No
there's very few of
caffeine.
us. Very few
Yeah.
of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, sleep is very important to me. I sacrificed it for this project for a little bit. But it was honestly the best month of our lives, I would say, but also like the most hectic as well.
Sure.
And that's why I say like once we finished production, that was one of the most like unbelievable moments that
Yeah.
we've ever had.
I can only imagine. And so, yeah, now we're sitting here in 2024. So between wrapping up filming and releasing, it's like a couple years,
Couple
2.5,
years.
3
Yeah.
years.
It should have been done a year ago,
Okay.
actually.
Give me a quick rundown on what kind of struggles have you run into while on this project for Upside Brown?
Not like concrete.
Okay.
It was more mental in a way.
Yeah.
We would be talking with a lot of people, getting advice, actors we'd audition, and people are just saying like, the schedule that you have is impossible. Like you cannot do this in 17 days. Like
Yeah.
you need a line producer, you need this, you need that. I didn't even know what that meant because I didn't go to film school. But I was like, I don't know, whatever. I think it was our naivety that allowed us to just go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
So those doubts, I think, were the struggles in the beginning.
Yeah.
But we didn't really care.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think. In terms of post-production, we had definitely some struggles in terms of some sound design and some other post-production related
Okay.
things. Yash and I edited it ourselves.
Oh, wow.
And we were both full-time working. I was working an engineering job. He was working his business job.
Yeah.
So it was pretty much every day, 9 p.m. to midnight, just editing it every day for like a handful of months.
Okay.
And then we slowly churned and got it through.
Bite size, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And then we had a member of our team that was working on some part of the post-production. It was 80% done. Ended up parting ways, and just for some disagreements and some life changes on their end.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it
And
happens.
8 months in, we had to fully start over the sound design process from scratch
Are you serious?
because there was a dispute in terms of like we weren't be able to get some things and all those kinds
Okay.
of things, and we had to go ahead with somebody else and start from scratch and also pay this other person, which we already paid the other
The other
person.
person,
as well.
yeah.
And so that was actually a financial struggle,
Yeah.
and it was also a time struggle because
Yeah.
it cost us 8 months and like however many $1,000 to
Yeah.
kind of redo it. With that being said, like these things do happen, and you learn from it in terms of like, how to work with people and relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So what we wanted to do was prove that with minimal resources, you can create a TV show and tell a story and touch upon important topics.
And I love that you talk about doing it on a budget, because I think a lot of people, when they want to break into the creator space, their biggest thing is money, right?
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to say it does require financial risk. But ultimately, I think there's a lot more you can do on a small budget than people realize. It's really about getting creative and figuring out how to make it work. And I also like that what you said about the fact that, one film wouldn't have done it justice. It wouldn't have done the narrative justice. And I think that's something that I feel as a viewer. I'm not a big movie person. I'm a big TV show person, though. I quite enjoy the relationship you build with these characters over a long period of time, right? If you had to pick out a few cultural themes from Upside Brown, what exactly would they be?
I think one key message we want to touch upon is that intergenerationally, there are differences obviously between, generations in the South Asian, experience.
Yeah.
And, both sides have their reasons for what they think about, and we need to find ways to embrace and coexist with one another while still fighting for what we morally believe is right. I think there's a way to do that. It's understanding why certain people, like say older generations, think certain ways in a more conservative note, for example, because we have one more conservative family and a more modern family.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, they're both people and they're raised certain ways, and there are reasons for why they think the way they do. Upside Brown, obviously it sounds like, it's a satire. We're trying to like poo-poo on shit on like people through comedy. And we do that. But like at the end of the day, there's a lot of drama and deeper conversations once these topics are surfaced through comedy, because we believe that, comedy allows us to touch these topics that drama itself would not, in a way. You can make certain jokes and bring topics up and surface them more palatably through comedy. And once those topics are surfaced, then you can kind of delve in a bit more through it. And so that was one really key thing we wanted to do. So for example, we have my favorite character in the show is Amol, who's the patriarch, classic conservative dad. Okay. He's not my favorite character, obviously, because of his character's personality, but because I think he embodies what a lot of films and shows demonize, which I think is fine, obviously, because there are certain morals and things that he does that are maybe objectively bad and all these kinds of things. But what we try to show is that there is like a child inside him. There is like, emotions. There's things that make him feel vulnerable as well. Yeah. And I think those human parts of villains that we portray in media as black and white are not shown. And so and we try to do that with every character. Every character we keep gray. We even have people, and their characters, like, obviously Shweta's character as well. Every character who on paper would seem to be like the protagonist, we give them sides of them that are more gray in a way. Okay. I mean? Like, even, so my character Vijay is, he is in the trailer and early on depicted as your typical brown fuckboy, right? Okay. Which is a pretty bad, negative stereotype in a way. Yeah. But in the show, we try to depict, and we do show like his passion for his art. The reason he is coming off as he is surfaced through certain insecurities that he's had in his past, certain upbringings he's had. He kind of grew up without a mother, a lot of other things, social pressures, all these other like kind of topics that have maybe led him to be the way he is. And then throughout the show his character development and change to show who he really is as a person. And so trying to show over the 9 episodes, which is why we were so adamant in creating a full season instead of an episode. Because if we only did a pilot, at the end of the pilot, you would think, okay, this dad is an asshole and Vijay is just a fuckboy. Yeah. But at the end of the season, you don't necessarily feel that. And that's why we were like, we want to tell this whole story, and like for each of these like 6 characters have these arcs start up. Yeah. And I mean, our goal is to make 5 seasons. We have 5 we have 5 seasons mapped out. And so all of these like stories and gray characters is what we want to kind of tell.
It's good from all the trailers I've seen, and I'm excited to dig in to watch the full season soon. Before we wrap up the episode, do you have any final words that you would like to share with the audience? Your message amidst all the noise?
South Asian entertainment, the space is very new in the sense that like there is not a lot of content or representation out there. And, my message is that we shouldn't assume that these opportunities are going to be given to us. And the mindset should be like, we have to go out and make it for ourselves. That mindset is the one that I really want to get across in terms of how I believe the future of filmmaking is as well. Yeah. I do believe that filmmaking and telling your story year after year has become more affordable to do. But I also think there's more competition at the same time. Yes. But I think what that means is that good storytelling is going to be valued at a premium. So if you can really hone in on figuring out what these stories are and finding a way to learn how to translate that into a video, film, TV series, whatever it is, that's going to be the future of filmmaking. The goal of my professional career through my like production company is like it's crafting universal stories through a like South Asian heartbeat. That's really what I want to do with the rest of my life. That's the mission I would like for other people to take as well, because I don't want to be the only one doing that.
I love that. That was such a beautiful message and a beautiful last note to leave off on. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
No, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Tune back in next Sunday for the next full-length episode. In the meantime, I'm your talk show host, Sandalina, signing off.